Going to call this meeting to order. This is the Finance Committee for the Holyoke City Council. My name is Joe McGivern, Chair. To my left is our Ward 3 Councilor, Dave Bartley. To my right, at large, Mike Sullivan. To Mike's right is Peter Tallman at large. We're also joined by at large Councilors Howie Graney and Ward 2 Councilor Terrence Murphy. Before we start, we got a much nicer agenda than last Monday, but always a little aggressive. We'd just like to indulge everybody to join us in a moment of silence. Our administrative assistant's father passed away. Ryan Allen's father, Matt Allen, passed away. We have just 1 minute of silence. Thank you. In the audience, we have from our school department, Anthony Soto. Anthony, if you want to come in. Items 1 and 2 deal with charter school tuition issues, midterm issues. And then item 3 after that is school resource officers. But if we go to 1 and 2 together, Chair, entertain a motion. Motion made, second, take up items 1 and 2. Item 1 being request that the line item known as charter schools sending tuition be decreased by $340,330. This was came under my name, came in, signed by the mayor, and initialed off by the auditor. And item 2 is charter schools spending tuition $436,844, plus school choice sending tuition $197,322. Be transferred to personal services, total of $634,166. Both these items are up for discussion. We'll take separate votes on them. But with us is Anthony Soto to explain this request. And Anthony, the mic is yours.
Yeah, so the first order is to just decrease our overall appropriation. And the reason we want to do that is because the state updated the school department on their net school spending requirement. And as part of our net school spending requirement, we include charter reimbursement that we get from the state. And initially they had projected a lot more charter school students than during the final state budget process. And then in December, when they go in and collect information from the local charter schools, they update that information. So in doing so, they said that the revenue that the city is going to be receiving is less by $340,330 than we initially anticipated. So the first one is just a simple reduction of the school department's budget, and the line that we chose is the charter assessment line, because those expenses are also expected to be lower by a greater amount, which ties into the second piece. So,
Anthony, what was the estimated number of students that we used at the beginning?
855.
And what is the actual?
804.
And the state determines this by, they go into the charter schools? Or is it what the charter schools give
charter
them the
schools
information?
submit information just like the school department does.
Yep.
Every October 1st, we got to get that information certified. So we go into the state's portal and we update. The school department has it so that we can create an upload from our system to their system, so that they can get all of our demographics and enrollment information. And charter schools go through the same process. So in doing so, back in June, I think what they do is they look at charter schools' existing enrollment, they look at wait lists, and they estimate, and then they tell districts, okay, we think that this is going to be your reimbursement, and we think that this is going to be your expense, and you need to budget those two amounts. So we budgeted that as part of the budget development process. And then they go in December and release the actual information. And the 2 transfers today are just to update our budget to reflect the updated information.
And the 51 students 51 students that were reduced from the estimate, are they back in the public schools?
It's hard to say, because I don't know what assumptions the state was making when they gave us that 855, but I will say that our in-district enrollment is up by about 60 students.
Yeah.
But I think primarily in the pre-K ages, because
So are they also adjusting our Chapter 70 monies by the enrollment being up?
no, they don't do that.
So why should we reduce our charter?
Because that is the one that they update mid-year. They don't update,
You know, it benefits them to reduce our charter, but
Right.
they're not gonna mid-year take care of Chapter 70.
correct. That's just written into that's just the way Chapter 70 works. We're always a year behind but not with with what they give the charter schools. The charter schools, they actually do right size. So I'm sure the charter schools ended up getting an expected dollar amount. And since they don't have the students, they're not getting the funding through us because we pass that funding through to them.
Understood. But you think,
I would
level
love,
playing
yeah.
field would be nice.
That would be really
We're gonna
nice.
do a real midterm look.
Unless it was the other way around, then,
Yeah.
then it would hurt us because it'd be hard to make that mid-year correction if it were the other way around. And I think, in fairness, I think that's why they lag it a year behind, because they don't want to put districts in a position where they have to make mid-year cuts because enrollment went down by 50 students or something.
Okay. Anthony, I think you worked with the auditor on the wording for this. Are you
Yes.
you comfortable with this?
I am. I know that the last time we went through this process, there were issues with the wording. After consulting with the auditor, this is the correct wording. And the other issue we dealt with around this was that there wasn't actually an appropriation to do a budget transfer to, but we corrected that this year during the budget process. Those are actually line items in the budget that you voted on.
Is there any discussion? Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, Anthony, the budget book had a certain number, which is different from the number from the, so I'm gonna walk through a few of these numbers here, because I've gotta I assume they're all based on a calculation by pupils or students, or however you refer to them, so I need to understand what that is. But school assessment, 12,522,870, and then you reference page 28 of the budget book, and that's true, it's on page 28. In my budget, it's under that object code 56513. There's a different number than what's listed in this order. Why is that? It's off by $36,716.
I can't see what you're looking at.
Right, so I'm looking at the budget, and I'll walk over and show it to you, but the budget says 12,559,586. And that's what my budget says.
Okay.
We deduct.
Okay, and then the order says 12,522,870. I just want to know what I missed there.
I believe 12,559,000. I'm not sure. I would have to talk to the auditor and figure out where these numbers are coming from.
Okay, and then
See the 40.
it's a very specific number, so 36,716 is just my calculation, but I'll happily stand corrected if I'm wrong on that. But, so if we could just get an answer as to what that's about.
Okay.
And then, and I'm kind of new to this part, so I just got to have you explain a little slower for me. So in order number one, okay, charter schools, it says sending, but they meant spending. Charter schools spending tuition decreased by 340,330. What does a 340,330 really represent? Is that the 51? Is that the 51 students?
Yeah, so the 330 represents, so this is now on the revenue side. So what we were just looking at was expenses, what we have to pay out for charter schools and to school choice. Now what you're referencing is how much revenue we're bringing in, and that we get right from the cherry sheet that the state releases. When we developed the budget, it was 340,000 higher than their most recent update that they released towards the end of December. So we're getting less revenue in, essentially.
Okay, so that's,
And that revenue ties into what our net school spending appropriation should be.
okay. All right, now going to item number 2. So, okay, item 1 was on the revenue side. Item 2 is on the expense side? Is that what you're saying?
Because of our revenue is decreasing, which impacts our total appropriation. Item number 1 is saying, hey, since the city's gonna be receiving $340,000 less, the school department's appropriation should go down by an equal amount. So that first one is to right size our total appropriation to reflect the fact that we're getting less charter reimbursement money from the state. And then the second one is simply transferring money from one account to another. Because the second piece of this, the state said, hey, you budgeted too much money on your expense side, you need to move it to your regular budget because there's less kids and you're not gonna be paying that out to the charter schools because there's less kids.
Okay, so the 634,166, that's a calculation that's based upon the 51 fewer kids? Or is that something else?
Yeah, so initially the state said we had to set aside $12.5 million so they give us all this money in Chapter 70 and they say, here's your net school spending amount, but you have to set aside $12.5 million that we're gonna eventually pass through to charter schools. So that number was too high. The new number is $11,745,696. And they also did that with school choice. So the end result is that we had to move money from those two accounts to the personnel service account. So we're basically truing up what the charter assessment and the school choice number should be.
And the personnel, it says person, okay, the personnel account, it's from that account what happens?
That's where the money's being moved to
And then it gets dispersed from there to
cover salaries.
cover salaries for,
Or this particular one will go to cover counselors and teachers
counselors and teachers and where?
in our budget.
In the public schools?
Correct.
In the public schools, okay, counselors
Correct.
and teachers in the public
Yep.
schools, okay. That's what I was trying to drive towards.
But I think it's important to also note that this is overall, if you look at the entire, those two journals, it's really a reduction in the school department's budget. But it does help the school department in that there's less money going out to the charter schools and we get to keep more of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, is that quantified in here?
Yeah, that's the 630.
That's the 634,166?
Yep.
All right. I mean, a lot of this is, probably straightforward for you, I'm positive, but.
Oh, it's not. It's,
Okay.
I mean, it's straightforward for me, but no matter who I explain it to, it's complicated. I've been dealing with this stuff for 13 years, so it's easy for me to understand, but it's going to take a while. I mean, even explaining it to Dr. Zreich sometimes, it's not something that's easy to understand.
Well, you've made it over the last 3 years, a lot easier for us.
I try.
That's it.
I'm all set.
Counselor Sullivan?
Okay, so just to make it a little more difficult again,
Go for it.
why isn't any of this going back into the general fund or free cash for what the city puts in every year. Why is it all staying in the budget?
Because we still need to meet net school spending, right? So within the net school spending number, you have our regular budget, and then you have what we have to pay for charter schools. Overall, we're going down by 340,000, but you're also getting $340,000 less revenue than you initially built into the budget. And then all we're doing, once we reduce that 340,000, is moving money within our budget. So it's really a budget transfer from one account in the school department's budget to another. Now that we're properly recording the charter assessments in the budget, it's really just transferring money from there to there without, still meeting the net school spending requirement that the state set forth.
Okay, so I'm totally lost again. But,
Okay.
So if I had to sum it up, this did not affect our net school spending requirement. It didn't lower that at all.
The loss in revenue did, which is why we want to decrease the budget by 340. But then the second transfer, which was the expenses going out to charter schools, that didn't impact the net school spending. It just meant, hey, you budgeted too much for charter schools and you need to move that to your own budget because you likely have those kids in your district. And here's the money to cover it. We told you to budget too much in those accounts. So now we've looked at the numbers, we've counted butts and seats, and there's less students out in the charter schools. So you're not gonna have to give that to the charter schools, so keep it in your budget. But the net school spending number didn't change. All it did was it was reduced by 340, which was the first piece of it.
You're doing great until you told me it didn't change, and then you said reduced in the same sentence.
Okay, so the first piece was the 340 reduction.
Right.
That was the first one where we want to reduce our appropriation.
Yep.
And that's simply because the city's getting less money. We're getting Chapter 70 plus a smaller amount in circuit breaker or in charter reimbursement than we initially thought. Those two numbers make up our net school spending dollars.
Right. So we're getting less money, but we still had to put the exact same amount in.
You lost me there. What
Good.
do you mean?
Good.
Yeah, you just paying me back. I see what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
No, so you lost more money, so we're reducing. So the first entry is a one-sided entry. It's just reducing the budget. And then the second piece is just us doing a budget transfer within our own budget.
All right. No, it just seemed, everything with the state seems to be a one-sided entry, but, all right, so I'll go back to my original statement. The state's given us less money, but out of the city budget, out of the taxpayers' pocket, we still have to put in the exact same amount.
No, you're putting in an equal amount less, meaning that
Then why?
the
why
whole
is-
appropriation went down by 340,000.
Okay, so then I'm back to saying, that why isn't it coming back into the general fund or free cash?
Because you're not getting revenue for that. We don't get all this revenue up front. Just like when when you build your budget, you estimate how much parking ticket revenue you're gonna get, how much revenue you're gonna get from residential taxes. You don't really know how much is going into free cash until you close the year out. But with this, it's a little more, like, it's almost, with this, it's a little more predictable, right? You guys probably monitor how much revenue is coming in from those sources throughout the year. Right now, what the state's saying is, so they do it in twice a year. At the beginning of the year, they say, we think this is gonna be the revenue number, and then now they come and say, this is actually gonna be the number. And we don't need to wait till the end of the year for that to finish out. The numbers that I'm putting forward today are pretty much the state's final numbers. They won't touch them again for the rest of the year.
Promise?
I can't make any promises, but if it's anything like the last 13 years, they won't touch it for another year. Those will be the numbers. We'll get that we'll get the revenue they said we're gonna get for Chapter 70. You know, unless the governor does 9C cuts or something like that. That's the only, I think that happened in 2010. That was the only time where, you know, we got a reduction in revenue that we weren't prepared for, we weren't aware of. But that hasn't happened since 2010, at least on the Chapter 70 side.
Councilor Greenie?
Yeah, just two quick questions. What is the net loss to the school department budget with these figures?
It's actually a net gain. The 634 is a net gain to us because we don't have to pay the charter schools and the other districts that students choice out to. That was reduced by a much more significant amount than the charter reimbursement itself
All right, and that money is going to be used for what?
for counselors and teachers.
All right, and the second question is, do you have a projected enrollment for next year? Because that's what you determine the total budget on, correct?
Yes. So, are you looking for what our enrollment is right now, or are you looking for what our enrollment
Well,
is
this year the
projected?
figures are in. I'm looking for next year's figures, a projected enrollment. You must have a projected enrollment for next year, depending
Yes.
upon,
Yes.
well, that would figure in what the cherry sheets are and everything else, I would imagine.
Right. So, they are projecting 804 charter school students, 417 school choice students, and then whatever our district enrollment was on October 1, which I want to say it was 5,300 and it's in the ballpark of about 5,350. So the way we get funded for next year is based on what our enrollment was on October 1. They don't project and tell you, hey, we think you're going to have this many students. They actually say what your enrollment was on October 1 is what we're going to fund you for next year.
Right, but you guys have those figures.
Yes, we do. And the governor already released the enrollment numbers that we're going to be funded on for next year because it's based on October 1.
Okay, thank you.
Anthony, what is the state giving per student? What is the magical number for charter schools?
Can you give me a couple minutes to pull it up?
Sure.
Okay.
And I'm sure it's equal to the Chapter 70 average too, right?
Yeah. They get the exact per student amount. The only thing, there's a lot of legacy costs that we're stuck with on our end, but for the most part, they get, they run the Chapter 70 formula for them. So we get $14,584 per student on average. Now that varies by student. Whether you're a high school student, a middle school student, an elementary student, ELL, special ed, low income, all of those things. But the average is around 14,584 for next year, and for this year it's 13,920. So as many of you may have heard, there's the Student Opportunity Act that the state is implementing, and the schools stand to gain additional funding per student. Mainly, it's a state's push to help districts like Holyoke, who have a high population of low-income students. So they're looking at districts that have students that are living below the poverty line and giving more money to those districts. So, which is long overdue. I mean, the last time that the state revisited their formula was in 1996. They haven't, or 94. You probably know better than me. And they haven't touched it since. A lot has changed since then. And, by far, we've been one of the most underfunded districts in the Commonwealth. given that we're funded right at the net school spending amount, and given that our students have a lot more needs than other districts and other communities. So the state's, finally put their, the Foundation Budget Review Committee came out and gave them recommendations back in 2016. And they've been sitting on that for the last 4 years. There's been a lot of, advocacy and awareness around districts like Holyoke not getting their fair share from the state. And they finally implemented a plan that plans to correct that. It's not happening as fast as I'd like. They're implementing it over a 7-year period, but it's happening. I've been in school finance for the last 13 years, and I've never seen anything like this. We're going to start changing the way we develop our budgets. And ever since I've been in this field, you don't have enough revenue, and you're always looking at how can we cut $2-3 million, but keep what we have and try to minimize the impact on what's happening in the classroom. So we did everything we can to keep cuts away from the classroom, keep cuts outside of the classroom. But I would imagine that, over the next 7 years, I wouldn't imagine, unless something happens where the state can't follow through on there, and they've already laid out a plan that maybe in year 3, we'll be in a position where we can keep what we have. And then we need to start thinking about how do we strategically invest this money in ways that are really going to help these students that are disadvantaged, in ways that are going to give these students equal access to, programs and resources that other richer communities have. So it's really exciting. It's really new. It's kind of weird for me because I've never been in a situation like that developing a budget, but it's refreshing because, when you're just constantly looking at 5 years out and, oh my God, another $4 million cut, another $3 million cut, it's hard. It's really hard. And when you cut as much as you can outside of the classroom, eventually it's going to creep its way into the classroom. Yeah. And now that we're starting to turn the tide on that with the state's help.
I would often say better late than never, Anthony, and it is better late than never. And
Yeah.
I know our state rep, Aaron Vega, was a leader.
Absolutely.
In Chapter 70 language change, and we'll always give him credit for that. And we know that we brought this to the Board of Education's attention well before receivership. You knew because you were in the Springfield Public Schools at the time, how wrong the formula is. And this same argument should be applying to the Building Assistance Fund, but that's not on the table tonight. The numbers you just gave me, is that Chapter 70 or charter, the average per student?
That's both.
Both, so there's, okay, so it's
So that's
the
the
same.
Chapter 70 foundation budget per student, which ultimately gets passed to the charter schools.
And the reimbursement is,
The reimbursement, the new number is about 1 million. And when we developed the budget back in June, and when the state released their final cherry sheet, it was 1,340,000. So when we got our updated numbers in January, they had reduced that reimbursement by the 340 grand.
and all the money we're dealing with this evening is coming from the state.
Correct.
Okay. It's not coming, I understand the question about general fund because of net school spending. We get credit for net school spending, but
Correct.
it's actually dollars, a formula that the state gives to us in terms of school spending needs.
Correct. Yeah,
And-
the state funds 87% of our foundation budget.
I got the charter school numbers. Why are we changing school choice sending tuition?
Because that number was overstated when they developed the budget as well. So there's less charter school students. Less less students
Okay.
choicing out to other districts than
You got those
initially.
numbers, just what they were estimated and what they are?
Yeah, they were estimated at they're at 417 now. And they were estimated higher than that number, and I don't have that number in front of me. But I can certainly pass that along when I get back.
Not a lot though, right? Maybe,
No, maybe
Handful.
like 24 students. So it's good news in that, less kids than initially anticipated are going to charter schools and choicing out, and our in-district enrollment actually went up. Overall, our foundation enrollment went up by 29, and our in-district enrollment went up by, I want to say 58 students. But a lot of that was pre-K, as you know, we're doing everything we can to expand pre-K. We just added another dual language class at Ian White. That was 20 kids. And we hope to be able to do more of that with this new Student Opportunity Act in future years.
Counselor Sullivan. Counselor Tomlin.
Oh, thank you, Anthony, for coming down and explaining. My colleagues asked most of the questions I had, but my questions is the total school budget is about
So all in, all funds?
Everything, yeah.
I would say about 120 million.
And the state pays how much of that? You said 87%. Is
So, yeah, I would say out of the general fund, net school spending, foundation budget, the state pays a little over 87%. And then the city picks up the difference.
The rest.
But what the city does do on top of net school spending, is they, we pretty much manage the transportation budget, so that's on top of
the
local contribution. The city also pays for transportation costs.
okay?
And any lease costs that are any leases that are greater than 3 years. So that's always been the
Right.
two hot topics.
Sort of like the one with either the
Central
busing
office
or the
lease,
offices, and the food service, I think, was
Food
something we
service is
bought.
completely self-sustainable.
Self-sustaining, yeah.
We have a revolving account, and the way that works is that the program actually generates a profit every year that then has to be reinvested into the program. So, one of the things it's a federal reimbursement program. I'm going to try to make it simple. We get reimbursement because we have a lot of students that live in poverty. We get reimbursement from the federal government as long as we comply with their menu requirements. There has to be a wheat, there has to be a certain amount of protein, there has to be a vegetable and a fruit. As long as we comply with that, they consider it a reimbursable meal. And for every meal that we serve, we get reimbursement of $2. That's not the right number, but
Right.
we get reimbursement for $2. So what we then do is we submit an RFP for a company to come in and run the program for us. And as part of that, we ask for a guarantee that they can do it for less than $2. Now, well, we don't specify that, but that's how they get
how they get-
competitive. They say, all right, we're gonna go out and get reimbursements for $2 a meal, and we're gonna do it for $1.80 per meal, and that's what we're gonna charge you, and you get to keep the 20 cents.
Okay.
And that revolving account, or that revolving money, then gets reinvested into the program. So, some of our, we got a freezer that we just did serving lines. Some of our, we just bought brand new cafeteria tables a couple of years ago. Every single school got brand new cafeteria tables. And then we put salad bars in all of our schools. That's not part of the reimbursable, but we want to have healthy options for kids. So out of that profit that we were making, we want to make sure that we improve the quality of food that we're serving.
Right, I think that's vital, especially today. I know I talked to her about the breakfast and stuff for the kids in schools. The other thing I wanted is, are you working on I noticed the changes in the student population. Do you do a trend every so many years of the charter school, the sending schools, and the public schools?
Every year,
So you can see, yeah,
I've
so
done
you can
it, so
project out.
I had to do that when I came on, but then every year I just add updated information. So I have the last 10 years.
Yeah, and I think this year, I mean, as our chairman stated, it's a lot more understandable how the numbers are, how it was written out and everything about the decreasing the money and then putting the money from the charter schools back into the personal services, which is a lot clearer for us, I think, than last year, and I appreciate that. And you're still working with the auditor, right, on a continual basis? with the
Absolutely.
numbers. Yeah, like we talked about last year, yeah. I think that's important too. Yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
Tanya's been great, since she's come on board, we meet on a weekly basis, and, her team and my team, we troubleshoot new ideas. I think that, we're headed in the right direction, and we're always, on both sides, we're always looking to make, to create efficiencies, to do what we do better, cheaper, faster. Because in my experience, coming in, it's like, that's how it's always been done. And when at least on the school department, like, we just blew everything up, because, we were doing paper timesheets. We're not doing paper timesheets anymore. There was no position control. So, like, if I had to ask one of my staff how many positions we have, like, I don't know. So now we have, like, position control. We have systems in place. We have processes in place.
That's
and,
important, yeah. That is really, yeah.
access to information that we didn't have before. And I think that, working with the city, they're like, hey, how can we do some of that over here? And, they're willing and open, and we're having those discussions.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well said.
Tanya, don't get a big head back there.
I don't do everything right with Anthony.
I didn't even see her back.
Counselor Murphy.
Yeah, a few things. I did a quick math after you said that we get about 13,000 to 14,000 for charter schools. So in effect, the state gives us 14,000, which comes into this budget that we just then send to the charter school. Am I correct? So then I did a quick calculation at what the lesser amount is and the 51 less students, and that's only deducting about 6,600 out of the 13,000 somehow. So does that mean we get to keep that extra money? I don't quite understand how that.
What are you referring to?
So the original budget, and then we made this $340,000, or assuming we're going to make that deduction tonight, and there's 51 less students. Well, I took that 340,000 divided by 51, it comes out to deducting $6,600. But I'm assuming the calculation still comes out that
Yeah.
the number of students we have still equals the 13,000 some odd for the.
So that's why we're able to take, I think if you look at
Next line.
the memo that I had sent attached to this work paper, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but so we're able to reduce charter and choice by, I want to say, overall by, like, one of them was 777,000 and the other one was 146. So it's really close to like 950 to $1 million that we're reducing on the expense side. And then we're only moving in 634 to the schools, and the difference is that 340, which is what we have to reduce overall.
Okay.
So,
So in reality, the
I'm
first.
sorry if that
No,
doesn't
that's
make
okay.
sense, but like,
For the first item, though, really all we're doing is saying the state's giving us less money and we're gonna send less money to the charter schools.
the state's giving us less reimbursement for our charter school students. It's a weird scale that they have. So if it's a first year, they give you 100% reimbursement.
Okay.
If it's a second year student, they only give you, 40% of what it costs. And then third year, it's 25%, and then no reimbursement. So if a kid's been in a charter school seat for 4 years,
We don't get anything?
you get $0 for that kid. Zero reimbursement
Okay.
for that student. So that's on the revenue side, which is why we got to reduce our budget. But on the expense side, the 51 students is why we're reducing those two lines. And then we're only moving, we're not moving an equal amount. So the first one is to get the 340 down, and then the 634 is to.
Okay. Do you know, or do we have a record of, since Paulo Freire School moved to Chicopee, how many of those students decided to stay in Hoyoke?
I don't have that information in front of me, no. But I can.
But I assume we must have that somewhere? I mean,
I know how many Paulo Ferrero students we're still paying for. I was running the numbers earlier today, so I have that information. So of of the 804 students that are in charter schools, I know how many of them are in Paulo Ferreira. I can get that to you if you'd like.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if, because they've moved, how many people
Yeah.
decided to stay in Holyoke instead of,
Right.
did they go to the charter school because it was convenient in Holyoke and now
Right.
are not going to be going to another one? Just a couple other, and I'm not sure, but I have a note that the 36,716, I had a minus in my budget book, and I'm thinking that was something that you had sent in somewhere in the fall.
36.
And then I had an increase on the school choice of 331,822, which we did somewhere in the fall. So I know the 36 is what Councilor Bartley was just talking about. So, and I'm assuming if the 331 is accurate on the school choice, at one time we moved that up to be 2,771,000. That's correct? Okay. So I know we did those somewhere in the fall, and it was, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
I
it was a
think-
memo that you had
Right.
provided at that point, and Tanya had recommended.
Exactly. That explains why this budget book, okay. Thank you for clarifying, because I was just, in my head,
Very
I was
good
like,
at notes.
what's going on here?
Pencil.
You verify that.
Yes. I
After
will.
a certain age, certain counselors have to take good notes.
That's sharp. That was good.
Counselor Leahy?
Yeah, thank you. And I guess some of our frustration, at least on my part, is you provided an excellent memo. You're very well written, you're very well thought out, but we don't get copies of that. So we have to work on this So I think earlier you're saying that you changed the process in the public schools, which is a great thing, because I always think the 3 Ps, people, process, and product, right? Those are the 3 things that make any organization successful. And Councilor Bartley's holding, I haven't even had a chance to look at it yet, but that's on our end. But I've got it. So I haven't seen that yet. The thing is, you're very well written. You always detail everything out. So it's on our side. We're going to have to make sure that all the counselors get that. I also thought I wanted to give you some props because a few years ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I'm not sure. The council was telling you that you and Steve Schreich, you guys had to do X, Y, and Z. Then you guys went out and did that, and there was the busing contract. Then everybody turned around and started calling the city councilors, and we were like, what are you doing to these people? Like, you're the ones that told us to do this. And
Thank you for saying that.
I know, and you guys did a very good job, and you do streamline the process. And the product is there. We have great teachers. The process needed fixing. You guys are fixing it. And the people, we have great people. Would you say that school choice and charter schools are essentially ruining the public schools?
I can't really comment on that. I
Financially?
I think that the funding formula and the way that the state funds charter schools is, in a way, hurts in districts, and I wish they would take a closer look at that. There was a point, or actually, I wouldn't even say there was a point. I mean, since I've been doing this, they have a formula for how to reimburse us for, to wean us off students leaving, and they weren't fully funding that for many, many years, to the tune of like shortchanging us like $1 million a year for 10 years, But the Student Opportunity Act seeks to correct that. So part of the good thing about the Student Opportunity Act is they're fixing the Chapter 70 formula, and they're trying to do something about the way charter schools are funded and the impact that it has on local districts. I think so with the Student Opportunity Act, they plan on implementing it over a 7-year period, but to fully fund the charter reimbursement, they plan on doing that over a 3-year period. So they're doing that quicker, which is good, because we've been complaining about that for a very long time. Like, you guys have a law, you guys wrote a law, you said we should be getting this much, but you're only giving us 65% of it. What's up? So they're fixing that.
When do you see the light in the tunnel for that?
Oh, I'm starting to see it now.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh, good, okay.
Starting to see it now. Like, this will be since I've been in Holyoke, we've had to cut $4 million every year out of our budget. And we've done everything that we could to keep it out of the classroom. And I think we did and to Dr. Zreich's credit, like, he was just on me about, like, looking at these big accounts. We can't touch class sizes. We gotta look everywhere before we start looking in the classroom. And we did that. We used took an all funds approach to budgeting. We weren't just looking at the general fund. We were looking at all the funds available to us. And strategically, we were able to do it with minimal impact on, we didn't have to touch class sizes. Now this is the first year, and I keep saying 13 years, this is the first year that I'm going into a budget development process where I'm not asking department heads to make cuts to their budget.
Really? Oh, so that's good.
Every year I've asked them to make 10% cuts. So we would go through a process where hey, tell me what you need first, and then I want to see a list of, if you had to cut 10%, what would you cut and what would be the impact on being able to deliver the services. And we go through that process, and some cuts we were able to accept, some the impact would have been too impactful, so we would deny those cuts and look elsewhere. But this is the first time ever that I'm rolling out a budget development process and not asking department heads to cut. We're still looking at a small deficit, and when I say small, it's $900,000 compared to this time last year was $5.2 million. But I'm confident that we'll be able to close that gap without having to ask for cuts.
All right, thank you, sir.
Counselor Sullivan.
Yeah, thanks. Anthony, this is going back to something we mentioned last Wednesday.
Yeah.
There was a charter school that was paying to use gym facilities here. I think it was Hampshire or
Hamden?
Charter School
Yeah, they're out of Chicopee.
out of Chewy. And they were a for-profit charter school?
I didn't check whether they were for profit or not. I just know they paid the full amount of.
Yeah, which I thought the full amount was for for-profits, that if they were a 501(c) or something like that, they got a reduction.
Right.
So there are charter schools out there, though, that are for-profit.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
No,
I thought so too.
no,
but-
if they're 501(c).
I wouldn't say they're
They're
they're allowed to make a profit. Whether they make a profit or not is.
But there are management teams, management companies that run charter schools.
Yes.
Not every charter school.
Right.
There are ones that are hired to run the school.
Right. Right.
So this is,
That's for
so
profit.
some of the money that we're sending out for charter schools is going to for-profit organizations. Wow.
The sad part is dollars that come back from the state are everybody's responsibility. But when you funnel these dollars to a charter school, there's no local say, there's no local accountability. If they go to a for-profit company, other than the state, there's no one watching,
Right.
Right.
The only thing I will add to what Mr. Leahy said, Councilor Leahy, if there's any way that I can get, my process has always been to take the information, get it to the auditor and Ryan so that they can file the order. If there's a better way to do it so that all counselors receive whatever is written, please let me know, and I'd be happy to comply with that.
That's,
Yeah,
is,
in all fairness to
Okay.
our administrative assistant, he's out with a family issue right now. His father passed away, so maybe I was a little too hard on that side of it, but it's not you. We just need copies of things.
Okay.
it's
If there's any
our
way I
end.
can help.
It's on
you
our
It's
guys.
on
side.
our end, not yours.
Okay.
That's our end. It's usually better, but we'll take care of it. Any other discussion? Counselor Graney?
Just quickly, Anthony, are we getting proper funding from the state for our SPED programs and our SPED students? Or are we still lacking in that area?
Completely lacking in that area, yes. So
Our percentage is around 27, 28% special ed,
27%, yeah, it's up there.
but the state's not
The state
helping us
the
there at
state
all, are they?
assumes that we're at 3 point. So they as part of the Student Opportunity Act, they upped it from 3.75% to 3.8
Oh,
5%.
boy, oh, boy.
So it's literally take your enrollment and apply a percentage of 3.85% to your enrollment, and that's what we're gonna assume you have for special ed students. And we'll give you the, the increment above the base in the Chapter 70 formula for
So
that.
we're still at an extreme disadvantage from most of the other school systems in the state, as far as special ed is concerned.
I think us and anybody that actually has a high percentage of special ed needs students like we do. I mean, especially out of district, we have over 100 kids that are out of district. There's some, we get $24,000 for a student that is out of district, and there's some kids that we spend over.
Some of those students could cost $100,000,
$150,000,
$200,000 out of,
If they're in a residential program, we're paying
yeah.
couple $100,000 just for that one student, and we're only getting 24 grand.
That includes transportation costs and everything else, doesn't it?
So yes, it does. And I think one of the attempts the state is trying to do is any students that are out of district, you never were able to include transportation costs in your circuit breaker reimbursement. And part of this the new law that they just put in place, you can now seek circuit breaker reimbursement for the transportation costs of these students that are out of district, which should help, which would mean that we'd get a percentage of that funding back through the circuit breaker program.
Okay, thank you.
Chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion, it's been complied with?
Adopt.
Adopt.
Second.
Okay, is that for both orders? We come to
Yeah.
both?
1 and 2.
Okay, motion is both 1 and 2 be adopted. We recommend this to the full city council, which will be next Tuesday. 1 is the reduction of the charter school sending tuition decrease by $343,380. And item 2 is a line item transfers within the budget totaling $634,166 from charter school tuition, school choice sending tuition to personal services, as explained by Mr. Soto. On those motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Anthony, can you help us out on number 3? And Tanya, can you help us out on number 3?
I make a motion.
Motion to take up number 3.
Is a transfer request from stabilization of $118,000 from stabilization into patrol school resource officer. This is signed off by the chief of police, signed off by the mayor, and by the auditor as far as the availability goes. And it doesn't really speak for itself. We did reach out to the chief of police. No one is here at the moment from the police department, but if you can either of you walk us through this? I understand what a school resource office is, but I don't understand where, money's coming from stabilization, we get that, but where's it going?
I don't know why it's coming from stabilization, I'll be honest with you, because the school department budgets for those 2 resource officers, budget $135,000 a year.
Right.
And we've been paying that. We're literally cutting checks to the police department. And so far this year, we've paid them $81,000. So I think maybe Tanya can clarify why there needs to be a transfer, but I can say that we've been paying, and by the end of the year, we would have given the police department $135,000.
That was my understanding, that's the way it's been done in recent years.
Yes.
Is there something different, Tanya, or?
So that is what happens, but that revenue actually goes into the general fund, into our revenue account. And I'm not sure, I can't speak for the police department, but I'm guessing that because it doesn't go strictly to the police, but into the general fund, they're looking for some type of a reimbursement for those expenses. So they're using their appropriated policemen to actually cover that, which means that, and then the school gives the money to the city. Does that make sense?
Chair will entertain a motion to deny.
You want deny or
So
table?
moved.
Deny.
So moved.
Why deny?
It's a budget accounting thing that, this is a school department a resource officer that they need, that they pay for from the police department. Okay? It's a transfer of money is all it is.
okay.
There is no reason that we have to use stabilization, which is our only free cash this year,
Right.
because what DOR did to us.
Yep.
They'll be in 2 weeks to explain that. And to use vital dollars that we need to get through the rest of the year to pay for something that the schools are paying for.
Okay,
It makes no sense,
doesn't.
you know? Counting it makes sense, Tanya, but from a practical point of view, that's
Right.
my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't have any history, I just know we're paying our bills.
So
I don't-
you've always done this, Anthony.
Okay.
Schools have always done this. It's a sad commentary that we need school resource officers, but Department of Education didn't want to listen to us when we talked about that before they put us in receivership either. But that's, I'm getting like too many editorial comments tonight, Councilor Murphy. I gotta shut up.
Happened last week too, 4.5 hours.
Oh, no. I wasn't the 4.5 hours.
There weren't that many editorial comments, there were a couple.
All right, on the motion.
The police department's not here. Thank you for your explanations. We understand it. Does anybody have any other discussion? Counselor Sullivan?
Just a quick comment too, I think the way this was explained to us when it first came forward in the supplemental budget, that this was money that was going to be reimbursed by the school department. Nothing you need to reply to Tanya. This is what was explained to us, I believe, by the mayor when he came forward with this, which also made no sense to me at all, so.
Yeah, just under discussion.
Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, I did email Mr. Soto earlier today. I think, and what he said in his email to me is just what he said on the microphone tonight. And certainly, when I put the question to him about reimbursement, he just gave the answer he gave, that we've been paying all along. So why was supplemental A, B, C, and maybe there's a D apparently, according to the president, why was that put forth? And why do we continue to buy this stuff? I mean, that's my editorial comment, Mr. Chairman. We continue to buy it as the city councilors, when time and again, what comes out of Room 1 is proven to be not 100% accurate. No, thank you.
Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is to deny. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Anthony, thank you, as always.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
gentlemen.
Tanya, if you want to sit there for a second.
Just trying to get out of here.
Well, this might be real quick.
Okay.
This one, if we don't have an answer, we can table, but we have a request. This is item number 4 off the table for discussion.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This is a request also from the police department from reserves of $28,643.52 into personnel equipment. And that's all we have signed off by the chief and the mayor, yourself. It's available monies, I guess, and it's going into a line item, but we don't know anything about it.
Was that the vest, Joe?
I don't know.
Thought it was the vest.
Oh,
No, I think we already did that though.
I thought we
all
did,
right.
yeah.
It does, I'm sorry, Counselor Tomlin's correct. Underneath, reason for request, bulletproof vest match.
Oh. it was
Match,
a
remember the
matching-
match?
yep,
We're gonna see if we can
This
get
is
it
for the
back.
grant.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a long meeting about
Yeah.
that.
And we're gonna see if we can get it back with the state reimbursement possibly, so,
Right.
Good memory.
yeah.
Counselor Murphy usually has the notes for that memory, but I guess.
I
you
take,
girls
no,
can't
I
read
take,
them.
I take good notes too on that one. I
Yeah.
Remember that one.
Good job, Peter.
Any discussion?
Make a motion to approve it.
Motion made, second
Second.
to adopt. Is there any further discussion?
Could I just ask?
Counselor Murphy?
So, and I don't have a note that if we had passed that before, because this did come up, and I know we had concerns about it coming out of the reserve account, and then it was brought up that it was for the vest. But I don't have a note that we actually passed that previous one. Did
This
that
is a
get
match. I
rejected?
think we did, right?
We
Yeah,
passed,
We did.
we passed the grant
The grant. yeah.
pending,
Oh, just the grant, okay,
yeah,
All right.
but we still have to pay the match.
okay.
Any further discussion? Motion to adopt, refer to city council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. 5-0.
Yeah, remember some of their vests were a year old or 6 years old?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Tanya, I think you can explain this one real quick.
Motion to take item number 5 off the table for
So
discussion.
moved. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Stabilization, $50,000. Special Revenue Fund, $50,000. Signed off by the mayor on both ends. And under explanation, nothing.
That's actually part on the supplemental budget. If you want me to go get mine, I can
Yeah, go.
probably
Yeah, yeah.
provide you some.
So, Mr. Chairman, there's no backup to that?
Just the department head, the mayor, as always, signs off before it can be initiated, and the department head, the mayor signed off too. And it's a special revenue fund. I called up Tanya to explain that to me. Not familiar with the special revenue fund, but we do have a code and object number.
So we'll get the department, and then we'll, right, Joe? So we'll get the,
Yes,
so it's coming from stabilization into what department and the specific account in that department. So I'd like to start out there, and then we can have a rational discussion.
So on the supplemental request A, it says that it is for the police department who had charged administrative fees to both off-duty and auxiliary customers, I want to say. And what they want to do is they want to appropriate the revenue that they received into their fund accounts. And one is for 42.7 into the off-duty, and the other is for 7,300 into the auxiliary.
Oh, is that like details? Is that
So-
details?
So the fee, they started charging I think it was a 10% fee, and I believe that what they thought is the fee could go into the fund to cover their deficit. However, Mass General Law states that any fees charged need to actually go into the general fund.
Right.
I kind of came at the end of that,
Yeah.
and I started appropriating the revenue into the general fund, so they never are covering their deficit, which is what I believe it was meant to do.
so your recommendation would be to deny?
Actually, because off-duty has been in deficit for so long and it impacts your free cash every year, I would want to cover my deficit with those revenues.
But off-duty is not city budget. Off-duty is,
Off-duty is a fund account that sits outside of the general fund, but with the city. It's treated kind of similar to a grant fund where at the end of the year, if that is in deficit, you will see that on your list of the money that the state requires us to
and I think
cover.
we need to eliminate that fund,
Okay,
you know, because that is not the way we should be doing business. And we've
Fully
said
agree.
this for decades now. This is private duty contractors paying for police officers as required. And I have no problem with the police department. This is the argument over the years of monitoring and making sure their officers get paid. But the source of revenue is not city budget. And the city
Correct.
should not be, city taxpayers should not be responsible for deficiencies within this fund. You know, accountability and by the police department and, you know, going after the people who owe the money isn't happening.
whether you eliminate it or not, we will still have to cover the deficit that exists. I just want to say that.
Just don't ask us for a transfer.
I'm not asking for anything.
Counselor Bartley?
Can you just clarify that last statement, just because I want to understand that? We have to cover the deficit, we mean the city of Holyoke taxpayers have to
Correct.
cover the deficit for what exactly?
We have to cover the deficits. Actually, the state is the ones that tell us, I think it's due to activity within a fund or how long it's been in deficit. I'm not sure exactly the calculation that they use or the requisites that they use. But if we sit in deficit year after year, they follow that, they look at the transactions, and then what they'll make us do is, after, say, 2 years, they'll see that that deficit is not being covered, and they will put it with our free cash on the tax recap, and they insist that we do cover that with tax dollars or free cash, whatever process we happen to be going through at the time.
Okay, but we're not, but this account is for what exactly, in your own words?
This has got to be my own words because I'm not really familiar
Yeah.
with these. So the off-duty, I'm in the understanding, are actually current city employees. And this off-duty account gets paid through our payroll to our regular officers. The auxiliary, on the other hand, do not run through the
Well, hold on,
payroll
let's just stick
system.
with off-duty first. Let's one at a time.
Okay.
Stick with that. Off-duty officers doing what exactly? Drill down for me. Is it detail jobs?
I can't say that for
I could give an
sure.
explanation.
I don't know what they do.
If Counselor Leahy can answer the question?
Yeah, so we had them, Peter, you probably a couple, maybe 2 years ago, whereas they came in, the financial people and the police department came in and said, basically, the auxiliary and off-duty people are working details. However, they're not getting paid because of the auxiliary. They're sending out bills, but they're like, we're not paying the auxiliary. And so they wanted to be underneath the umbrella of the city. So I think that's where they set up these accounts. So now it's the city going after these contractors, making sure they pay. Does that sound all right?
I think so.
Oh, wait a minute, I think that's what I just implied. I
Yeah.
think it's for
Contract.
off-duty officers in uniform.
Yes.
Working jobs for vendors.
Yeah,
The vendor could be a
Right.
public entity.
Yeah.
More often than not, it's a private entity. And for some reason, which is unclear to me,
Not paying right away.
the officers in Holyoke uniforms do the job, and they get submit an invoice and expect to get reimbursed later. What we found out over the course of time, well, you're squinting. So did I say something improper?
I'm listening because I'm just learning as
Okay,
well.
well, so when you squint, you,
All right, don't-
okay, I'm just, all right, so let me just, so it appears, and I'll happily stand corrected, that multiple times HPD in uniform were doing road jobs, for example, it may not be road jobs, may be something else, but what we commonly refer to as detail work. They do the work, they submit an invoice, sometimes we're paid, sometimes we're not paid. And it's the latter, sometimes we're not paid, that's caused this deficit. And what I heard the auditor say is that this deficit is flagged every couple of years by the Department of Revenue. And when it's flagged by the Department of Revenue as a year-on-year deficit account, Department of Revenue says, we've got to make the City of Holyoke taxpayers have to make good on this account. The irony, Joe and the rest of the committee, chair and councilors, is that the job being done is not for the Holyoke taxpayer. Now, the former chief used to say, well, I mean, these are our eyes and ears out there working the jobs, and that's great. They're out there doing that, but they're working for Holyoke Gas and Electric or whomever, and I mean, I'd be shocked if HG&E doesn't pay. I mean, so it's a horrible example, but they're just an example of somebody that's a vendor. So let's just say the ABC company hires them, and the ABC company, for whatever reason, decides not to, they hire HPD, they decide not to pay HPD. And so a deficit occurs. And I know, and I appreciate what Councilor Leahy said, because we've talked about this before, is that why isn't, I mean, we've been burned before. Why? HPD says if we're going to be out there, it's a minimum of 4 hours check for an officer. So whatever, 4 hours times X dollars an hour, whatever that is, $50 an hour, I made it up. Why isn't that paid in advance? But more to the point, who is monitoring this? Is it your office, Tanya? Is it Ms. Smith's office? Is it the finance director at HPD?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so it's the latter? It's the financial person at HPD.
That's correct.
All right, so maybe that, we should consider revisiting that. I think we suggested that before. I know we have suggested it before. And then the other part, and I'll finish here, what's this deal about the 10% fee? What's that about?
That was actually implemented before I came to the city.
By whom?
So it's all hearsay, it's conversations I've had, but I was under the impression that they began charging it in hopes to cover the deficit and assist with expenses within those areas.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that HPD has this deal where they're supposed to collect the money, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but now before you got here, and you've been here 18 months?
Yes, I think so.
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
I remember you sitting right there. I remember
I
you
do
sitting
too,
right over there.
actually.
So now the HPD has added I don't even know, I mean, this is a rhetorical question, but, you know, can they do this? I mean, you don't know the answer, I don't know the answer. But I'd like to have somebody give us an answer. Can HPD unilaterally add a 10% admin fee? And then what happens to the admin? I mean, I don't think they can. I don't think a department unilaterally, without a city council and or mayor approval, can do something like that. I'd be hard pressed to find any kind of criteria that allows them to do that. So I think we have to get a better understanding on it. But that's it. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Joe?
Counselor Tomlin?
Yeah, and I know we've talked about this about it, and I think I've talked to Sandy, the treasurer, and you, Tanya, and Katie McCoy about the thing with the auxiliary police, and finally got some of that squared away. And I think part of it all lays down to what happens is, when they do the work, they send out a bill. Could be anybody, like you said, any company. It could be Verizon. It could be somebody that don't pay the money over the years. I think this money has been built up over the years.
Correct.
That has been paid, and they say, how do you make somebody pay more? I don't know if you take them to court. How do you make a company saying, hey, you owe this officer, $400 for 2 days of road work, and they don't pay it. And it seems like over the years the city's been covering it. And I understand what you're saying. It should taxpayers' money be paying this fund that's not really, taxpayers aren't getting the benefit out of it. I'd really like to maybe get Katie McCoy in here and try to find out more. I'd like to maybe table this. And this could be one of the funds that we had a problem with this past year with our budget, with the free cash, that the state came in and said, well, you're in a deficit for the last 6 years in this fund here, and we got to, whether it's grants or whatever, now we're going to have to take the money out of it. We're going to put the money forward. So that's my concern too. I think we need some more answers on this before we put this into this fund, and maybe call in some other people.
Before anybody seconds that, does anybody have any other thoughts? Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, I'd like to deny it. And then if the council or anybody else wants to file an order, because there's no backup to any of this. There's nothing in that jacket that backs up either one of these numbers. I do see it on the supplemental, the 42.7. This expense will transfer new revenue from recently enacted admin fees to the off-duty police fund to reduce a deficit. Now, we don't know what the deficit is, so there's that. And then the 7,300 is added revenue / admin fee. So I got to be honest with you, I'd rather just deny it completely and then file a separate order if you're so inclined to have somebody come in, especially a finance person. But I think a bigger discussion's got to happen as to, what's the deficit of this account, and who is the one really with his or her arms around it administering it. And if it's not working out HPD, then we've got to find an alternative.
I'll second
A
Councilor
motion to
Tomlin's.
table has been made and seconded. There's no further discussion on the motion to table. All those in favor, please
Aye.
say aye. On the motion not to table, please say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 3-2. Item is tabled.
Well, so what's the plan on this?
On the table. Item number 6, introduced by myself. This is a Holyoke City Hall restoration repair grant. Motion to take off the table for
Second.
discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? With this is Bob Parent, city engineer. Bob, welcome. You've talked to us about many grants. Can you walk us through this, including, is there any matches?
Sure, I'm hoping this one will be fairly simple. There are no local matches.
Yay.
This grant is a legislative earmark that was spearheaded by Representative Vega.
Oh,
It was originally passed by the legislature in fiscal 19. However, in order to align with the funding that the city received from CPA and Mass Historical to do the restoration of the stained glass windows, it had to be pushed forward until fiscal 2020. The state legislature, in the updated governor's budget that was passed in December, voted to allow what was originally fiscal 19 money to be expended in fiscal 20. Therefore, we're presenting it to the council tonight, looking for essentially permission to receive that grant funding.
The amount of the grant?
$50,000. The grant will be used for we believe a couple of different things. There are ineligible costs associated with the stained glass window restoration. The preservation architect who is overseeing all the restoration activities that put the technical specifications together for the job and is, at the end of the day, really has the technical responsibility for making certain that the windows are restored properly. Her costs are not eligible under either the CPA funding or the Mass Historical funding, so this grant will go to offsetting her costs. We expect that there will be funds available in the $50,000 beyond that. And you may or may not be aware, and I don't have a lot of personal knowledge regarding this, but the city did receive a Cynthia Woods Mitchell grant in the amount of $15,000 to develop a historic preservation plan for City Hall. There is a match for that in order for us to accept those funds, which have not been put in front of City Council yet. We can then take the unused portion of the legislative earmark that is generically dedicated to City Hall restoration and put that towards the local match on the Cynthia Woods Mitchell grant for the preservation plan for City Hall. So basically, we're using what we need to for the stained glass window project, and then the balance will be put directly to other City Hall restoration activities.
Joe, and that's legal, we can do that?
Council Leahy's question?
Yeah, perfect.
Any other discussion?
I make a motion, I'm sorry.
Councilor John?
Yeah, just real briefly, on that grant, there's been work done already, right, on the windows, and then how much is completed already?
A quick summary of what the Phase 2 project, because there was Phase 1 project completed several years ago. The Phase 2 project includes a number of different things. It includes removing window number 3, which some people may be aware was the window that actually had damage during a windstorm in November, and a portion of the figurine in the window was hanging basically over the parking lot at one point. So we were able to remove that window, crate it, box it, preserve it from any additional damage. 2 windows, windows number 9 and number 11, that were crated during the previous phase of work are now out at Guaducci Stained Glass in Great Barrington, being completely dismantled and put back together again, and having broken pieces of glass replaced, completely re-leaded, re-put back together, reframed for reinstallation later come springtime. And then we're able to then put additional money through the CPA and Mass Historical money into removing windows 6, 7, and 13. 6 and 7 are the 2 small windows at the rear of the City Hall. Window 13 is the 3-part window at the front of City Hall, removing them, crating them for future preservation. It's important that we, to the extent that we can with the funding, that we use it to make certain that nothing gets any worse than it currently is, and if funding is available in the future, then restore those windows as well.
Okay, thank you.
Everything boarded up, that's windows that are taken, does it get boarded up?
Where the windows are taken out, yeah, a Lexan panel gets placed that essentially is a permanent panel until such time as the stained glass window can be put back in place.
Okay.
So there's no plywood. There is one piece of plywood that will go away once the windows that are being restored currently are put back in place, but everything going forward is replaced with Lexan as opposed to plywood.
Any further discussion? Councilor Murphy?
Is there an estimated cost for each window, or does it depend on what's going on with the window?
Based on the bidding costs, we had 3 companies bid this work. Their numbers were in a few $1,000s of each other, so it was a pretty good idea of what a round number to do the actual restoration is, as much as $60,000 to $70,000 per window. It's not inexpensive. So I think the bid was around $64,000, $65,000 per window. So, as we look forward and start planning for future windows, that's the type of investment that's needed. And again, we're going to refile with Mass Historical again this year. We're refiled with CPA already. We're looking for other funding sources if we can.
Any further discussion?
Make a motion to accept the provisions of the Holyoke City Hall Restoration and Repair Grant.
Second.
Motion made second to adopt accepting the provisions of the said grant. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimous.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is a Sustainable Materials Recovery Program municipal Smurf. Is this recycling, Bob?
Memory.
He thought he was out of here.
Sustainable materials recovery program, sustainable materials, what's that? Is that recycling?
A motion to take it off the table for a quick discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have a copy of the said grant. We have a, I wouldn't even call it executive summary, but a letter addressed to our mayor.
I believe it is.
Okay.
Um,
I
is-
take it that's
Yes.
something you're prepared to talk about?
Unfortunately not.
That's okay, as long as there's no time-sensitive, real-time sensitive. City council, next city council meeting is next week, and then, what do we do,
March 10th.
March 10th after next Tuesday.
Motion to table.
Second.
Okay, we'll put it on the table, Bob, if there is anything real-time sensitive, let us know, and we'll go to Plan C.
I don't believe so. There was a deadline for the mayor to sign the contract, and I believe that that has happened at this point, and now it's to actually move forward with it's fiscal year money, so I believe, it's certainly end of the fiscal year, but we're not there yet, obviously.
Okay, thank you. On the motion on the table, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thanks, Bob. Moving on to item number 8.
We should take item number 8 off the table for discussion.
This is from Repair and Maintenance Sewers,
It looks like, yeah.
advertising to retirement benefits. Bob? This one's signed off by Michael. I thought he might have sent you.
You didn't move fast enough to get out?
This is a total of $2,000, $1,500 from repair and maintenance sewers, $500 from advertising, total to retirement benefits. And it's to cover the wastewater treatment plant fiscal 2020 pension appropriation from the retirement board. If you don't have anything, we
I
we
don't,
can-
other
we can
than what I
table
can
this.
read in front of me, unfortunately. I don't have any
Motion to
firsthand.
table.
We'll table it.
A second.
Yeah, we'll be asking questions and still, I think we have time for this. Motion to table, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thanks, Bob, again. Now run.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah.
Next one, everybody's,
Take item number 9 off the
two
table.
individuals sitting behind you. Number 9 is a senior safe grant. This is comes under myself, but this comes into the city of Holyoke through our state, through the governor, signed off by the mayor, and signed off by the new chief of the fire department, and the deputy chief sitting to his left.
Deputy Chief.
Absolutely, Maria. Come on now.
Pay raise, right?
I appreciate it, thank
Off the
you.
table for discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. I think we all recognize this as an annual type ongoing grant, but
Right.
how about running us through it?
So it is not just senior safe, it's actually a student awareness of fire education.
We have actually two.
Two.
Yeah, we have,
So
we have two items in
one-
front of us.
Right.
Yeah, so we can do them together if nobody objects? Okay, go ahead.
That's
Sorry.
okay? Okay, so the student awareness is a small grant that is $5,200, and this pretty much gives us so that we can go into all the pre-Ks. We also do home daycares and private daycares through 12th grade. So with this grant, we're supposed to be in the schools minimum of 3 times a year per classroom. These are classroom visits. They're not auditorium style or anything like that, classroom visits. So that's for SAFE, for seniors, for student awareness. And it's pretty much to buy coloring books, stickers, pens, pencils, anything that we bring whenever we visit the schools.
It's 5,200.
200.
No match? Just comes in,
No,
we take it?
just
and-
directly, right?
Okay. Any questions on, Counselor Tallman?
Yeah, I just had a question. I go back probably to my first term. Is Freddie the fire truck still around?
So Freighter the fire truck We do have a newer one.
Yeah.
The thing is, it does take about a team of 3 people, so we
Okay.
only have $5,000 to work with. So
Okay.
we don't really have that amount of money to pay for overtime.
Okay, but you,
I do this pretty much Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, when I'm my regular shift.
okay. And you stated the students, now where do you go, you say go to daycare centers too?
We do the home daycares.
Care centers?
Yes, so we have a total of like 82 that we visit every year.
Wow, okay. And in the schools, you go from where, kindergarten all the way up to high
We
school,
do
or-
the pre-Ks, the Ks, first, second, and third, and then we skip to fifth, and then we do eighth, and then 11th. So because there's too many schools in Holyoke, so
Oh, right,
we
right.
we just don't have the time to go to all the classrooms.
Now, do you go by yourself? Do you have somebody with you usually, or?
I go pretty much with a team of 2 other firefighters that help me. Lately, it's been the other 2 female firefighters, so the 3 of us go in, only because I was doing it by myself, and I was doing like 4 or 5 classrooms at a time, so I ended up with no voice for the day. So going with them, we like divide and conquer, so we go in different classrooms.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the student awareness?
Motion to accept the student awareness.
Second.
uh,
What
grant.
about what about the senior one?
That's
You want
coming up
both
next.
together?
Oh.
Yeah, we can. We took them up together, so maybe
Okay.
that'd be better. Senior Safe, if you could walk us through that, how much, any
Sure,
match?
Senior Safe is 2,200, and that is so that we can do our free installation program. We have a program that sometimes we have to buy the smoke alarms or pay the firefighter to go and do the installations. We do that every Thursday. We also go into the senior center, and also after school, after hours, whenever the counselors invite me to go for a neighborhood watch meeting, so that pays for that too. And we visit every single shelter in Holyoke to teach fire safety too. And we buy goodies because the seniors love goodies, so mittens and calendars and, different things like that we bring for them.
City councilors like those too.
Councilor Bartley?
We have a lot of group homes and some other shelters and things like that. What do we do to bring fire safety awareness to those entities?
So shelters are easier because they're registered, so I have a list of I used to have 26, but I think it's a lot more now, shelters. So it's just, I call them and I tell them I want to come in for fire safety, because every month they have to have a meeting for the residents, so it's easy. What's harder is group homes. We do inspections in some of them, the ones that are registered, but as far as fire safety, it's harder to get in.
Yeah, can you let us know at some point quantify it, the number of shelters and then the number of group homes that you go into? I just like to know that, and I'd just like to know that they've been made, given the proper training and education on this. And then I'd also like to know if there's other funding opportunities to support you
Right.
to go into this, because it's really
From time to time, the landlords, not much lately, but the landlords were going, it's like, you did such a great job, here's $1,000 for your program. But it hasn't happened lately, so maybe it is something that we can look
that's a
into.
really nice idea.
Yeah,
So.
that's a good idea, yeah.
So there is I wish Council President was here, because he kind of had his finger on the pulse more with the landlords, but there are some fairly active landlords that have been here multiple times. I'm sure I don't want to say their names on the microphone because it's not fair to single them out, but certainly we know who they are, and, I find them to be more active and more vigilant. If they're coming in here, I'm thinking that and then there may be a landlords association as well.
I just went to the Landlords Association meeting last month, maybe 3 weeks ago, at the log cabin, which I brought all this to them. I can go in there and teach fire safety, let me in, type of
Really
thing.
important, so I hope we can hear more about that.
And we also go and do I call them the elderly high-risers, all the elderly buildings, every single one gets a visit from us too.
I just wanted to add that Maria does a fantastic job, her team.
Thank you.
They're dealing with the most vulnerable aspects of our community, the young children, the older adults, people in the shelters, people in group homes, and they do a wonderful job. Very impactful for short money. They make a big difference.
So I did in your packet, I included pretty much, because I have to do a end of the year save budget, say, no, end of the year, what do they call it? Sorry. The state does ask for an end of the year, what did I do with the money and the budget? So on audit, thank you. So I had to put the programs, the places that we go, the number of students that we reach, so everything is in your packet too. And we do this in Spanish and English, by the way, because a lot of the schools, we asked me to go in for the Spanish-speaking only students too. And in the shelters, that's pretty much what I do. We do one day in English and one day in Spanish.
Any other discussion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Councilor Leahy and Councilor Sullivan. It's right here on the list. You get antsy, you know?
Yes. No, I was just thinking, I put my name on the list, so of course I'm going to have discussion. First of all, I concur with Jeff's statement, Chief. I get used to calling you Chief now. I concur. She's been around. She does a fantastic job. And sometimes people are in positions, not only in the city government, but any position, that that's not the right position for them, no matter what you are. This is like the perfect fit for you, the position that you're in, and you're doing a fantastic job, and I don't think anybody could ever disagree with that. So you said there's about 26
Homeless shelters?
homeless shelters in
There's
the
probably
city.
more now.
There's probably more now. And how many group homes did you say there were?
The ones that we do inspections, I
Wait,
want to
so
say,
clarify that. So every homeless shelter gets registered, but not every group home gets sheltered? I mean, not every...
right. I don't know why, because it's a home, so it doesn't have to be registered by with the city.
Don't you think that should be even more for the fact that it's an old home? So let me ask you this. Are the fire requirements the same, such as if you have, like, say if you have 10 people in a home, an old home, shouldn't there be like sprinklers and that sort of thing?
Absolutely, yes, that's
that
rules.
law?
Right. So their licensor requires them for the fire department to do an inspection, so those are the ones that we have to go and do an inspection. From time to time, we have fined illegal ones, so we shut them down and we close them, we explain the rules, and you can't do this, yes. But the ones that we do have in the list, they get inspected quarterly by us, so.
And do you look,
4 times a year.
so say if there's a group home or if there's a shelter, and do you look to see if there's enough adequate water supply, close by, God forbid something happened. We had that awful thing on Fairfield. So do we look at that? Do we also look at like maybe the width of the road, making sure apparatus to get down before you give a permit?
Well, we look at, all these requirements for whatever kind of development comes into a neighborhood. We're looking at water supply and street development. We're dealing with it down in South Holyoke with a new grant going on down there. So we're very cognizant of what the neighborhoods present fire-wise to us. And we try to take full advantage of, making the neighborhoods better and better for response by the departments, whether it's police, fire, DPW, or whatever.
All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you both very much.
Councilor Sullivan.
No, Councilor Leahy got to go first, and he asked my question, so I'm all set.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Hey, Tanya, quick question. When DOR was looking at discrepancies for the accountings of different grants, was there any issues in the fire department?
There you go.
I honestly can't say for sure, but I know it was minimal, if anything, at all.
Okay. That was just an editorial comment to our new chief.
Yes,
You're responsible.
he knows.
Take the money.
He's good, he asks.
I like to say, and this is no disrespect to our former fire chiefs, but I think we finally have a fire chief that can do the budget himself, Tanya. I think you're going to look forward to working with this guy.
Whoa, now.
Am I giving you too much credit?
Shots fired. Wow.
Was that a left-handed compliment?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No,
It's only Monday, Joe.
we have great chief of
let's try to
police,
ease into the
great
week,
fire
shall we?
chiefs. Not many of them can do a budget over the years, and that's historical. And
Oh, boy.
Tanya and I have talked about that. And it's they're what they bring to the table isn't always the budget experience. Any other discussion? Motion to adopt, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Good seeing
Have a
you.
good night. Be safe, both of you.
Good night.
One more.
Wow. Big sailing.
Take item number 11 off the table. This is a request of transfer for head clerk, $11,549.48 to investigator, same amount of money. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. With us, we have our Veteran Affairs Director, Jesus Riera, and Jesus, welcome. as well.
Thank you for having me tonight.
It's like deja vu.
Yeah, it's like, I don't want to make this a habit, though.
Not always a bad thing, you know.
Well, you know, there's cameras and stuff.
Can you walk us through the transfer and the request and
Sure, so the reason for this request is to try to get back to what we were trying to do last year, and that is restructuring of our department. Up to recently, we had 3 employees, we had 2 full-timers, and a clerk who was almost 3/4 times. Our clerk has gone above and beyond what is required in her job description. It's the only reason why we've been able to perform the way we have in our department. She went out, became a state veteran service officer, and then recently became a national service officer to file claims with the federal government, which is well beyond her job description. We lost her to this fine young lady behind me. She's now working full-time in the auditor's department. So what I'm trying to do is replace that position, the clerk's position, with an investigator who would be mandated to do these jobs that we were lucky enough to have a clerk do for us at the appropriate pay rate. So the request is to transfer the remaining amount in her line item, the $11,549.48, into the investigator position, which is already a NAGE approved position. And even if someone came in at the max rate as a S12 step 5, we have enough funds in that account to pay them throughout the end of the fiscal year. But this also impacts next year, because next year we'll be looking for money to fund this full-time position in the tune of it's around the $36,000 range. And prior, I think, it was like 24. So there's an impact there that we'll see next year if this is approved.
in the head clerk next year, or head clerk the rest of this year, and next year there will be no head clerk?
There will be no more than 3 people in my office. I don't need it. I mean, I'm a true believer that we have machines now and emailing, so many different ways of communicating that we don't need a full-time clerk anymore. We are required to do our administrative tasks ourselves. We're sort of self-sufficient, and the check and balances are within the office. We make sure we all...
And what's the max for the head clerk position?
I can't look that up right now because I'm not sure if they actually finished the contract.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you got it?
She said they haven't. Right?
Okay. Well, what is it currently budgeted at?
No, it was only budgeted for part-time, 3/4 times.
Part-time, yeah.
Right. So we moved in 2019, we expended $23,449.
Any discussion? Counselor Sullivan?
He goes first this time.
Well, you know what? I'm tired of both of you. Counselor Sullivan?
So, but basically, we're taking money from a part-time position and moving it to create a full-time position that wasn't funded at all last year,
That's correct, sir.
okay?
It's been
So-
vacant since the beginning of the year.
But it wasn't funded at all. I mean, it's vacant, but it wasn't funded.
The investigator position was not funded. So last year, we tried to fund the 2 new positions, and then that would require us to transfer funds into the existing positions because we didn't budget for those last year. That we had a big tobacco last year. So the way that was cleared up was by taking the money that was requested for the investigator, because you did allow for $25,000 for the investigator, and move the money into the clerk's position, into the deputy officer or the deputy position, and then other department heads later throughout the year transferred money into my account to complete what I needed for my personnel items.
All right. So what do you anticipate the salary for a full-time investigator to be?
It's about the $36,000 range. So we're looking at, it's an S12 position. I don't know what the negotiated pay increase is going to be, but at $20 an hour, $35 hours a week is kind of what I put my budget for next year. So it's in the $36,000 range. It would never be more than my deputy director's position, who makes 39 or something.
Right. But by approving this transfer now,
Yes,
in effect,
yes,
we're putting the seal of approval on a
yes, sir.
increase.
Yes, I want
For the
to make
department
sure
for
very
next
clear
year.
about that. Yes, we are.
Okay.
That's what I'm asking for.
And it's not, remind me, Jesus, it's not a new position. It was unfunded recently.
It has been unfunded for a couple of years, and at one point, it was a funded position. They removed it and got a part-time clerk. And I kind of want to direct like the impact of this position. The investigator continuously looks into those who are receiving Chapter 115 money. So the Chapter 115 money is the money you give me that I pay veterans with for public assistance. Recently, we found that one of our veterans, now you're supposed to be indigent on this program, right? If you're single, you have less than $5,000 in liquid assets. If you're married, less than $9,800. Through a recertification process, we found someone who had $50,000 in a mutual fund, who did not report that to us. This is what an investigator would do. Now, mind you, we're juggling. We apply for SNAP benefits in our office. We're doing VA claims. We're looking at VA medical history. We're looking at medical history. We're doing Chapter 115. We have walk-ins. I'm on 4 or 5 different boards, different coalitions to end veteran homelessness, to the DTA advisory board here in the city. It's a lot of work. We're now tracking and documenting, sort of like when you go to see a physician, what interactions we're having with our veterans to see who are the repeat offenders, who's been using the program. So we're a little bit more robust than what we used to be. We're digitizing all of our files. For the first time in, 3 years that I've been here, we actually bought a case of paper, So we're becoming technically advanced, but there's a lot of legwork. I mean, you sit down with someone for a half hour, you're gonna be taking notes for about 40 minutes after that once you're done. So the value is in finding those who may be defrauding the system and returning those dollars back into the city. So now when I report to the state that I found someone with $50,000, all the money we paid for, the state's not gonna give me that money back. It's now on us to get that veteran to pay us back everything that we paid him.
I don't doubt the work and the benefits that can come out of it. What I've got a problem with is taking an existing position now and pre-approving funding in anticipation of that happening in the next budget cycle.
I don't know any other way of doing it. We tried something last year that didn't go over very well, which is, hey, here's what I expect to spend in these 2 new positions. Let's work with this. That didn't work very well with city council. It turned into a big debacle. Now we've lost someone. I've lost someone who I spent 2 years mentoring, 2 years getting motivated, and who actually took on the responsibilities that are well beyond her pay grade. Now I need to replace that. If I don't replace that, then we reduce services. It's sort of the way the formula works. I'm there 35 hours. Well, for those 35 hours, there's only so much we can do. That third body is a big impact. And I understand that there's going to be an impact on next year's budget.
What you're asking us to do is force that upon the next budget cycle without, it could get cut. It could meet just the same amount of resistance, and we're like pre-approving it ahead of time.
Yeah, if there's another way for me to come here and ask for that third position that that appeases everyone, I'm more than happy to do that. Currently, right now, I don't see any other option.
Councilor Leahy.
Are you done?
Yep.
Totally understand exactly what Councilor Sullivan's saying to the T. What's different, though, in my opinion, is these are veterans, and these are people who fought for our country, and you're doing a great service, and you have very little help. Some of these people, just like every other people, they could be defrauding, and we need to get to know who's doing that, because they do it once, they're going to do it twice, they're going to continue doing it until it gets caught. Now, 50,000 times, say they do that 10 years, that's money that's going to be coming out of the coffers of the taxpayers. coming out of, you saw, we were talking about the fire department, we're talking about schools tonight. That money adds up fast. Having said that, we have 3 people that are working in the Veterans Department. I don't see that the amount of veterans that the city of Holyoke is going to have decrease anytime soon. And I think it's only going to increase. I know it's only going to increase. This is a department, as you know, I'm very passionate about. I want you to have the services that you need. I'm sorry that you lost this employee, but I'm also happy for her that she got to go to a good department, full-time, benefits. She obviously put the time and effort to deserve that.
Absolutely.
So, I'm very proud. I don't know who this person is, but if she's watching, I'm very proud of her and I'm very happy for her. But it's time for us to get, making sure that your department is situated, and, I'm going to vote for this.
Thank you.
Jesus, how much I lost the name of the fund, but the money that comes in from the state that goes to individual veterans, how much we paid up front? How much of that is reimbursed by the state?
So the majority of it is 75%.
Yeah.
So if we're paying, what we pay out is ordinary benefits. We pay out fuel stipend and then reimbursements for, say, Medicare Part B, a Medigap insurance, so on and so forth. If we provide services to prevent homelessness, so providing first, last, and security for a new place, or we put them up in a hotel, that gets reimbursed at 100%. So we we front load it all. We pay it all. And we've done a pretty good job of keeping it in that $350,000, $400,000 mark. We're doing a lot of work to get alternative sources of income for people. So filing VA claims, making sure they're applying for SSP, Social Security, everything else that they can possibly qualify for. Do quite a bit of work in there.
So the investigator would legitimize the individuals that apply, that they are eligible?
That's correct. And then the focus would be to turn my deputy director to focus on VA claims solely. Currently, right now, we have access to VA healthcare system through Citrix, so we remote log into the VA healthcare system, and we're looking at people's medical records, we're looking at their diagnoses, we're looking at their, also now, where do they serve overseas, and if there's any correlation with the diseases that they have with a claim that they can possibly put with the VA. No one in the state does that but our office. We're way ahead of the game.
And which person would work with veterans who are not classified correctly or need an adjustment in their classification? Not their fault, but...
So discharge upgrades?
Yeah.
Wilfred and I will serve the role of national service officers. We'll take on anything that's VA related. The investigator will focus on this local benefits, Chapter 115, making sure people are up to date. And there's going to be cross-training. I believe that the machine needs to work even when someone's out of a position. So that person will eventually become trained.
You know the individual I'm talking about? Wilfredo knows.
Okay.
Went on for a year and a half, and it's for a veteran who served, did 2 tours in Afghanistan, and when he was discharged, it was not properly handled.
Oh, I do know now.
Okay.
Yeah, luckily for us, we do have evidence that person was discharged incorrectly. So we have access to a system called DPRIS, so the Defense Personnel Records Information System. And basically the Army said, you weren't in Afghanistan. And I'm looking at counseling statements in Afghanistan in his personnel records. So it's evidence that we can use for the discharge upgrade. Unfortunately, it takes a long time to process a discharge upgrade.
It's been 18 months.
What a shame.
Councilor Murphy.
While I agree with Councilor Sullivan's point, I think the way he's trying to get this done now allows us to really think about the position. I agree with Councilor Leahy. I had met with Jesus at his office when I heard about his part-time clerk going in. We talked about some of the problems that they've had with people getting benefits that they are not eligible for, and then it's up to us to try to go back and get that money back. And as he indicated to me, the odds are that you're not going to get that money back. So that's money lost. Not to mention the fact that the service being provided obviously gets, it's less than what it should be. And he was thinking about going with just himself and Wilfredo, and I thought this is the time to do it. Don't try to do this during the budget when you're going to get 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and we're dealing with, 80 pages of budget and $110 million. Let's talk about it. I think it makes sense. He's talking about making a more effective organization. He's talking about trying to eliminate mistakes, and more important than that, being in a position to provide the full benefit that veterans are eligible for and do it effectively. So, I mean, it's approximately $12,000 or $13,000 addition from what it might have been if we just kept a part-time clerk. But clearly, we ended up, and the other factor, if we do a part-time clerk, the other issue is trying to be able to keep that person. As we've seen, we had a good part-time clerk, and they found out they can get far more money and a better job going somewhere else. So I think this puts us in a position where we can truly honor our veterans, and we can be in a position to do that with limited financial risk. So I'm hoping that the council will say yes and recognize that, this is going to be an increase in the budget, and it's going to come, and I certainly hope the mayor's planning on putting it in the budget. But I think it's for people that have earned their stripes, and I do hope that we will approve it, and I thank Jesus for putting this forward.
Councilor Bartley.
I appreciate all the comments. I think they're all good. I'm not going to speak for Mike, but I mean, last year, Mr. Chairman, this budget was a gong show. Should be the most non-controversial department in the entire city budget, and because of the actions that were put before us, it was a gong show. And I think what I heard from Councilor Sullivan is that don't want to have to repeat that for last year. It was embarrassing. And then on top of that, Mr. Chairman, the way this council was treated in a special meeting right after that, I think was patently unfair. I mean, to have a whole parade of veterans come in, almost accusing us of something that we didn't do, that actions that we took because of the incompetence of others. We had to take actions. I mean, they put in positions that were not approved through ordinance. This is not rocket science, Mr. Chairman. This is following the order of the city government. But they put us in the position. So what I heard, whether other councilors heard it or not, I have no idea. I don't want to go through this again. We're all supportive of veterans. To think otherwise is nonsensical, and I said that when we had our special meeting in early July. I said that. I couldn't believe we had to go through that, but again, that was on them. They made the bed, we had to live with it, and then we had the blowback, which I thought was really unfair. But we got through it, and everybody got funded, and so I think we should support this now, and then we'll look forward to a budget that's in proper order in FY21, and we'll just send it right through. Thank you.
Councilor Dumpy.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to speak in favor of this transfer, and I think it's important. I've been in the Veterans Office several times and been helped by them on different occasions, and I've seen the job that you've done over the years, and I think it's difficult to try to get the job done and to investigate and to find out there's some people that are coming up to receive benefits that don't really should get them. I think that the help is needed in the office. You've taken this office and really put it into sort of one of the models of the state where you've done things, especially with the records and the documents that you have there. So, and it's good to know that we know this ahead of time, that the budget, he's going to be looking to putting this in the budget next year, and it's, granted it's $36,000 probably next year, and it's about a $14,000 difference, which is, I think, is going to benefit the veterans of our city and benefit the department. So I will approve this tonight and speak on behalf of the veterans for the next full meeting. What happened last year was unfortunate in July. I mean, that's past. tried that, and I think it did put a little bit of onus on the council and made it look as though it was all us that did that, and it wasn't, of course. And every one of us here, whether we agree with certain things or budgets or expenditures, that we are all very much supportive of our veterans. So I will speak in favor of this tonight.
I'd speak in favor of it too. To me, this is the appropriate time to do this, as opposed to, leaving a head clerk position vacant for the next 6 months, knowing that you want to remake the office, and it's not a new position, but an old position brought back. And I think we've always encouraged, especially new department heads, to do this, to be able to justify, but also within affordability, create, the type of department that you see is necessary for your vision and goals for what you do. And Jesus, you've lived up to everything you said when you sat there the first time we interviewed you after the mayor appointed you. And I just, not just credit, you've gone above and beyond the call of duty. And if this is the way you want to see your department, I certainly support that and encourage it. I know our auditor back there said to us that she wasn't going to fill a position until she saw how she was going to remake her department and her needs. And I don't know, I'm not going to ask you, Tanya, on record, but I hope this new individual in your department makes sense to your department. And I can see the smile on your face already. So, Jesus, Tanya says thank you for training her. And as far as I'm concerned, everybody makes out in this situation and we go forward. Councilor Sullivan.
Yes, in the end, I'm going to support it. I just want to go completely on record that this is the wrong way to redesign a department, and it's setting a very bad precedent to go forward this way. It should be addressed during the budget process. We've already discussed that. But it's just the wrong way to go about it.
I have a motion.
Motion on the floor is to adopt. All those in favor?
Second. Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you, Jesus.
Good job.
Thank you very much. Have a good
everybody.
night.
Yeah, thank you very
We
much.
don't meet next week. We have a penciled-in meeting for the 24th. It's looking to be hopefully a big part of it, if we can get everybody, players to come and stakeholders forward about the orders that are in, emails that are in committee with the DOR, Councilor Bartley's order, and a couple other with the discussion, as to where we are. The auditor is going to play a big part of that. But right now, as soon as I get confirmations from DOR, we'll set that meeting. We've caught up. I thank you, everybody, because it took 3 meetings, but we caught up to a lot of what was thrown at us. There's still a few loose ends, but we can work them in the next couple of months. Good. Motion to adjourn? All those in favor? Any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.